Welcome back to the lock-in. We've made it to episode 10, so I think that's the point where we stop making reference to the fact that we made it to a certain episode and we just kick on. Dara, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it gets a bit pathetic otherwise. We can't be going and it's episode number 23. It
feels like kept us on the air.
The first 10 numbers are all significant, but once you get past 10, it's all the same. I mean, I heard about some African tribe once. They had just 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and lots. So I think for podcasts, it's 10 is probably the cutoff.
I like it. Well, without further ado, I want to welcome to this show. He has been on the chip race before. He is the 4th place finisher in the WPT Germany opener. He is the Unibet poker commentator. He's a run at once commentator. He's a WSOP Europe commentator. He is, let me check my notes here. He is the GTO commentator. It is our good friend, Henry Kilbane. Henry, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I feel like it's going to be a lot of fun.
It could be career-ending for all of us, Henry.
It could be. I was trying not to laugh at Dara's African tribe number reference there, but yeah, I'm going to try and keep myself sane for this one.
That's the idea of this show, that it just always puts both the hosts and the guests on that knife edge between ending their careers or their careers potentially peaking. Should just be somewhere there.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that we'll be all right. But congrats on making it to episode 10, by the way. I'm surprised you guys haven't been cancelled already. I mean, getting me in for episode 10 as well. Things must be going well.
Well, look, Henry, I do want to talk to you about the lock-in concept. It's all about being stuck in your house, being locked in. You really don't deserve to be on this show. You've been the most traveled person I know in the last 5 months. You've been all over the fucking world and back. What's going on? How did you do COVID or not do COVID?
Well, you sound like James Dempsey. That's exactly what he's been saying on some of the streams. Just like Henry, for Henry, COVID doesn't exist. But no, it was actually a pretty real ordeal. If you remember back in Dublin in February for the last Unibet Open, I was in my hotel room
You were patient zero.
I was patient zero, man. Like I had COVID and I had Kasha running around on the phone to doctors for me. I wasn't allowed to leave my hotel room for like a day and a half, and then apparently I'd had it for like 10 days, and by the time I got around to seeing the doctors, I'd recovered and everything. So yeah, it was a pretty...
He came downstairs in the Burlington. I gave it to the rest of us.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, Cheltenham got the blame here in Ireland for being the thing that kickstarted, but it turns out it's actually Henry in the Bonington. Wow.
Yeah, apparently, man. But I remember I flew from Dublin to America straight after that event, and when I left, like when I got on the plane, there had been one case in all of America, and by the time I'd landed, it jumped up. It jumped up to 8, and now fast forward 5 months, and I don't even know what the official figures are anymore. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was patient zero.
Yeah, if this was a more high-tech show, we could probably put up a world map linking the places you've been and where the hotspots then were for COVID. You might actually be the patient zero.
Maybe.
Super spreader.
Maybe, but I just want to go on the record and defend myself a little bit here, right? Before I get absolutely slammed for traveling. I was locked down in America for like 4 weeks, and then I was locked down in the UK for 2 months. So yeah, don't want anyone coming after me saying I've been spreading it.
I hate to push back, but you just said I was locked down in America for 4 weeks, and then I travelled to the UK. That's not what lock-in is.
Well, I had to travel to the
inconvenienced. I had to stay in that weekend. I remember that weekend. They wouldn't let me leave.
I wasn't exactly going to the UK on an absolute jolly. I was sleeping on my mum and dad's couch for 2 months because I had nowhere to stay. I couldn't get home to Malta. You guys, kicked me off the island. So
I only wish we'd left that rule in place and not let any of the English in. It's the reason we've got a bloody spike in cases now.
Well, you blame the English for everything, but let's be real. It was probably that rave at the Radisson that did it. So. Probably
was. Anyway, joking aside, I was a little bit worried when I saw that live poker had returned to certain parts of the world, namely Rozvadov. Rozvadov had a big Germany festival, I know. It's right there on the border between Germany and Czech Republic. A lot of people played that. You told me this number off camera there yesterday when we met for a pint, and I was actually shocked. I didn't even realize it was this big a number. One, you went and commentated it, so a tacit endorsement of that event at the very least from you.
Yeah.
But what sort of measures were taken to keep people safe? I think a lot of poker players out there listening to this show are wondering what it's going to be like when they do eventually go back to a casino.
Well, it was a really weird experience, right? Because it had been locked down for, I want to say, the better part of 4 months. And there were talks about it being closed down all the way till WSOP Europe, so that, you know, there was a safer environment. And then I'm on Facebook, and I'm looking at like pictures of the German poker days or whatever it was at King's. I'm like 2,800 entries, I think it was 2,300 or 2,800. Correct me if I'm wrong. Something like ridiculous like that. And I looked at, you know, the figures in the Czech Republic. I looked at the figures in Germany, and they had been like slowly easing off the lockdown, like the whole lockdown situation, because they had recorded good numbers. So I believe the first month was masks for everyone as well as temperature checks. So I was expecting the same thing when I got there. And then I got there, and it was just like, oh, well, COVID just doesn't exist apparently anymore. Like, it's, just like walked through the hotel lobby, you know, like, hey, I'm here to do the commentary. Yep, just go through kind of thing. I was like, okay, no temperature check, no masks or anything. Everything seems to be like back to normal. And it doesn't look like there's actually been any like spike in cases or anything. So it's a weird one, because you would think that people would not be rushing to go back to live poker. But then you look at what's going on in America as soon as Vegas opened up a couple of card rooms, and all of a sudden everyone's like a 6 max cash game reg. So I don't know, man. I think after everyone being locked down for so long, they're just like chomping at the bit to get back on the live felt. And yeah, I mean, King's just seizing the opportunity.
Well, Dara, turning to you on this one, obviously we've sort of made our own personal pledges to be super careful with this kind of stuff. We probably aren't going to travel at all this year. Unibet, are the brand who sponsor this show and sponsor us, have decided to have no events in 2020. And I imagine they might even extend that into 2021 if what we're all expecting now, which is this resurgent spike, maybe even becoming or turning into an early second wave.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's... I think that seems to be the responsible thing. It seems to be one of those situations where it won't really be gone until it's gone everywhere, because as soon as you have hotspots anywhere and people can travel to and from those hotspots, then it's just going to keep spreading and respreading. I mean, again, I'm no virologist, but there's also question marks over whether having had COVID-19 gives you long-term immunity. So that could obviously make any second wave even worse. It's an interesting one with live poker, because you would think that live poker is one of the worst things. I mean, people are handing chips and cards, and even if there are measures put in place, it's still not a very good, or rather it is a very good atmosphere for a virus to spread. Yet we don't seem to have any clear evidence that there has been a big spike due to any single live poker event. So I think it comes down to what people want. Personally, I don't really want to play live poker until this is much more under control than it is now. But I understand that other people are taking a slightly different attitude. They're so keen to get back to live poker. It's almost like, I'll take whatever risks there are. It seems a little bit short-sighted to me, because I've heard people express the opinion, for example, that unless they have underlying health conditions or they're past a certain age, that they're not really concerned about getting it. But first of all, you can obviously spread it. And secondly, I mean, it reduces your risks of fatality or serious after effects, but it doesn't completely remove them. I mean, there are cases of perfectly healthy 18-year-olds, for example, who've died. So it just seems like a negative free roll to me in the current environment.
Yeah, it's a good way of describing it. Henry, I want to touch on some of your commentary work in the last while. Obviously, you've done the thing that a lot of people have done, which is segue with the live brands into the online versions of those products. That means WPT, like we mentioned, but also probably the thing you piggybacked nicely for notoriety, because it was a huge thing in the poker world there only a few months ago, was the Veni Vidi Galfond Challenge. Incredible, obviously, we covered it on the show, just an extraordinary comeback. I know for a fact that Phil was really close to quitting and didn't, and then obviously made the most extraordinary comeback to eventually take it down, like right down the home straight. It could have gone either way as well. So not just the 800k swing back the other way, but also just locking it up right down the back straight, which was incredible. What was that experience like for you? And before you answer that question, I want to quote you something which you have tweeted, which I assume is very relevant, so it might be a good leaping off point for you. You said, Phil has given us the opportunity to look into the mind of what it really takes to make it in the current poker climate. And I'm not talking about the stakes he's playing. I'm referring to the guerrilla mindset the man has, and the mindset of a lot of poker players, and the mindset, that a lot of poker players lack, myself included, both at the tables and away from them. So, with that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, greatest comeback of the last decade in the poker world. It was just an absolute privilege to be part of something like that. But yeah, just to touch on that guerrilla mindset, I think for me personally, that comeback just made me really realize how important it is to work on areas of your life away from the poker table. Just having a really good balance in relationships, friendships, activities, just everything you do. And Phil is he just has this guerrilla mindset. And I was for so long just focused on putting in as much volume as possible and not really caring where, my head was at when I was grinding, whether I'd been influenced by, outside circumstances. And he just kind of proved that taking a break and just being honest with yourself and just going away and, spending time with the family like he did, rather than just to keep pushing against Veni is so important. And I think that's something that a lot of us are guilty of is, we have big losing sessions or we're on a downswing and we just keep going after it because we just think, well, I know that I'm a winning player long term. It's just a matter of time before the variance turns around. And sometimes you just need to take a break. And I did that last year. I just did that now. I took 2 months off because I was just burnt out from doing too much commentary whilst trying to grind at the same time. And it's just really refreshing. And I've come back, I said to you last night, I feel really good about my game at the moment. I'm playing really well. I'm super positive going into sessions and confident, and it makes a massive difference. Just stepping away for a couple of weeks or a month and just enjoying life and the benefits of being a professional poker player, and stuff that we get to enjoy, the financial freedom and just enjoying life. And I think a lot of people don't do that.
Well, without teeing you up, Dara, to blow smoke up Henry's ass here, we've known Henry since the beginning of his commentary career. In fact, I like to say that we plucked him from the mean streets of Bratislava several years ago and helped him become the man he is. That is obviously taking way too much credit, but what do you remember about Henry of a couple of years ago, and sort of how have you observed his ascendance in this industry, really?
Yeah, well, the first time I even heard of Henry was in Bratislava, as you said, and you came to me and you said, I don't know who they are, but there's two Cockney Barrow boys who appear to be doing commentary on this thing. I have no idea where they come from, but or where they came from, but they do at least seem to know something about poker, and they're keen on the chip race, so I obviously like them. And that was my first warning about Henry. Henry pretty much did fit the description of a guy whom you might expect to see selling oranges from a street stall.
Where the fuck did that come from? Right? What?
But very, very enthusiastic. Also very respectful, which we both appreciated, I think. And then listen back to his commentary, and his commentary was really, really good, really polished for such a young guy. So Henry was immediately on my radar as someone that I thought was going places, would make a great commentator. So I don't remember the exact timeline, but I do remember we recommended him for the Unibet Open gig. And then I got asked to recommend 2 people for WSOP Europe, and recommended him and my good friend Garrett James, and they both did a great job as well. So whenever you're asked for something like that, it's a little bit of a negative free roll for the person doing the recommendation, because you're not going to get any real credit from the people if you give them somebody good. But if you give them somebody bad, they'll remember it for the rest of their life. And it'll count as a black mark against you. So it was very important to me that I recommend somebody that I trusted. And Henry, despite his Barrow boy accent, fitted that.
Well, to be fair, I've always given you guys credit. Like any time I've gone on, on the record. But yeah, I remember getting that phone call when you messaging me. I was at the airport I think I was coming back from Bratislava, actually flying back to Tallinn. So, are you interested in doing WSOP commentary for the entire series? I was like, sorry, have you got the wrong number, kind of thing. Like, I've only done like one big event, and that was the Unibet Open in Bucharest in 2018. And yeah, it was a pretty surreal moment.
Yeah, well, you did such a good job with that, to be honest. And to second what Dara said there aren't too many people who come into this industry. I know you bank yourself as a pretty good poker player as well, but you took as much interest, or maybe even more interest, in the art of commentary, which immediately impressed me. I think a lot of people kind of think, well, I'm a good poker player. I talk smartly in my study group, so I could kind of bring a bit of that for analysis. I could also, I have a bit of personality. I have good banter in the bar. I could bring a bit of that into the booth. And they sort of see it as like an extension or a secondary thing from their existing persona in poker, where actually you talked about studying Nick Schulman tapes. You talked about, the concentration you put into pacing, your way you speak, something I could learn from. I probably talk way too fast, but you do have a lovely delivery style, and that's not something that just is completely natural. Obviously, a little bit of it's a natural thing, but you do sort of work on the craft.
I mean, there's just so many people to learn from in this industry, and the way that the game has changed over the years from, like 2005 to WPTs and ESPN coverage of the World Series to what it is now, where so many different events have their own Twitch channels. There's a different audience for all of these events, and something that I had to learn along the way was, what am I going to bring to the table today? Because there are events where, I know the majority of viewers are crushers, probably infinitely better than me in terms of poker skill, and they're there to watch, hands being broken down, etc. And then you have these like recreational events where you have 7 of the 9 players at the table. They've got their parents tuning in, they got their girlfriends, their grandparents tuning in, and they don't want to listen about frequencies and board textures and like table dynamics because they don't get it. They just want to, they want to have a bit of fun in the Twitch chat, and they want to see whoever it is that they're railing have fun. And that's something that I learned really early on. And I think that is why I've had the success that I've had in commentary so far, is because I know my audience really well, but I am still trying to learn from, the best out there, because they're the best for a reason. Shout out Jamie and Nick and Ali, some of these guys that are just showing up week in, week out to cover some of the most prestigious events in the world. And then they get the phone calls because they're the guys that just get the job done.
Yeah, I think what you said there about understand the audience, that's kind of crucial. I think a lot of people just really don't get that, particularly people who come in from the poker playing background. They just think, they want to hear my brilliant thoughts on every hand. But like a lot of the time, the main people who are watching live streams are friends and family of the people on the live stream. And the last thing they want is to hear some snooty commentator ripping apart every play that their favorite makes, and you see so many people make that mistake. It's always incredible to me that people just don't they're not able to zoom out and think, well, who's actually listening to this? It's people who care about these people, and how useful is it for me to keep telling them that their boy is playing like a donkey? Another thing which I think you're really good at too is the like most commentary gigs now are 2 people, and obviously people like Lana and Norm are established; they've been around for years, but you basically have to bounce off lots and lots of different people. And I found this the first time I did commentary with you at Unibet Open. You're really, really good at sort of instantly connecting with the other person and teeing them up and basically making a good partnership rather than just trying to get your own thing across. That said, is there anybody, you don't necessarily have to name names, is there anybody that you've had difficulties doing that with or working with?
Oh man, well, I was about to Yes, there obviously have been people that I've struggled to work with where, you're trying to cue something up, as you said, like teeing it off for them, like bringing them in for something and then you just get like a one-word response. And it's, kind of like my dating life. It's a bit of a fail. And I'm kind of used to it, I'm kind of used to it. But there are just so many people on the flip side of that I've imagined would be really difficult to work with, and then after 5 minutes we've just gelled and it's just been an absolute blast. But yeah, you can get people that are difficult to work with. I assume a lot of it comes down to the fact that I'm still I am still new in the industry. And it sometimes feels like to these people that I've had like difficulties working with, I'm almost like a burden on them because I'm the nobody, I'm the new guy. These people are well established, and they're just like, why the fuck have I got to do commentary with Henry Kilbane? Like, who the fuck is this guy? And I get the sense of that, and I hope that it changes in the future because I love doing commentary, and there's so many people as well that can vouch for me. I'll bring anyone into the booth at a live event. I have so many people come up to me. Oh, Henry, I'd really love to do 20 minutes commentary with you. Can I just go in and you just need to remove the ego from you. People just want to have fun. And it's one of the things that I love about doing these live events as well is that I get the opportunity to just make someone's day, bring in a recreational that comes to these events. They've qualified for Unibet, for example. They don't get to play these 1K events all the time. And they would love to just, jump onto the stream and give their parents a shout out or something. And if I was, I don't know, a bit more of a tour, I'd just be like, well, no, sorry, who are you? And that's the vibe that I've gotten from a couple of people that I've worked with. But I'm assuming that's going to change with time. I hope it does anyway.
Well, you are building an impressive resume, including which is obviously the World Series in Europe, which Dara spoke about there, and no doubt similar sort of gigs will be coming up. Speaking of the WSOP, it's obviously on GG at the moment. It's sort of transitioned from the WSOP.com platform. They've kind of done their main event. I think it was a 1K, and now it's all sort of Europe, I guess, or the rest of the world are able to play on GG, or most of the rest of the world. Dara, you've been playing a decent chunk of events. I think you're playing maybe 3-4 days a week. I know you've had some cashes. Congratulations on them. I know you've had some day twos, which usually means in the money as well. So congrats on them. But there is a curious feature with GG where they allow you to sell shares, which is a nice feature. It's kind of like in the client staking. But part and parcel of that now is day two staking. And there are some pitfalls that, are out there when it comes to buying action of people in day twos. And yourself and Adam Owen last week put together a fantastic video sort of analysing the kinds of stacks that you want to watch out for and the kind of situations. Do you want to maybe walk us through the cliffs of that?
Sure, yeah. I first became aware of this. I was obviously aware of the staking on GG, and I do think it's a brilliant feature. It's a really good feature because it allows players to play a little bit higher than they would normally, and it also engages ordinary people who will then rail, and it's a great way of increasing liquidity on the site. Give props to GG as well. They don't charge a fee for this. It'd be very easy for them just to slap a 1% on whatever, but it's a really good thing they do for free because there's no transfers involved. They just automatically, if somebody buys 1% to you, they automatically pay out 1% of whatever you cash to that person. They automatically transfer the money from them to you when they buy the 1%. So the whole thing's done automatically. So it's a really, really good feature. The first time I was aware that they were selling for day twos was, I think I was playing one of the multi-fly tournaments, Colossus or Millionaire Maker, I can't remember which. And normally I sell a small amount in the lobby just to give people who are interested a sweat. And I found I couldn't actually sell for the day ones of those events, which I thought was kind of curious. But the reason was you can play different day ones and bring forward your biggest stack. But then you're allowed to sell for day two. Now, I didn't really think too deeply about it because I had no real interest in selling for day twos, let's say. But Adam contacted me and told me the way that it worked, which is basically they have this concept called adjusted stack markup, which basically just means that if you come through with 10 starting stacks, then the baseline for 1% of you is 10 times as much as it would have been at the start. So if it's, say, $1,000 tournament, which 1% with no markup at the start would be $10. If you wrap up 10 stacks, 10,000 is the new baseline, so it would be $100. And then you're allowed to put markup on potentially on top of that, or markdown indeed. I think which maxes out at 2. So you could potentially sell your 1% for $200 on day 2. Now, there's an immediate problem there, because anybody who understands ICM knows that 10 starting stacks typically isn't worth 10 buy-ins, because the more chips you have in your stack, the less each individual chip is worth, and the less chips you have, the more they're worth. So Adam was very concerned that people were selling selling shares in large stacks, and that the buying public, let's say, didn't understand this ICM implication. I think when you talk to a lot of recreational players, their intuitive runs counter to what the actual situation is, which they think a big stack is great. They'll come in the top places more often. They'll be able to bully other stacks at different points of the tournament and so on. But actually, when you break it down, they're not. So in the video, we sort of went through different scenarios where we looked at somebody, say, who bagged up 30 starting stacks, and how much that would actually be worth using the ICM calculator. And we found that, it was somewhere between 12 and 26 starting stacks was the actual value of the stack. So somebody even buying with no markup, let's say a 30 starting stack, which is actually only worth 12, is essentially paying 250% out of the gate, which is going to be pretty impossible to overcome. The whole purpose of the video was really just to explain the ICM, that if you buy a piece of a big stack, it won't be worth as much as you think. And if you buy a piece of a small stack, it's probably worth more than you think. Basically, I think our bottom line, for both myself and Adam, was that this is a great feature, but the public needs to be educated, because, obviously tournament players have been selling for forever, and there's always these debates about markup. Is so-and-so worth, is Phil Hellmuth worth 4.8 in a turbo that he late regs? Is player X worth even 1.0 in a tournament in which he might be minus EV? There have always been these debates, but I think the public is sort of reasonably well educated on that now, and they can make reasonably good informed decisions. But this introduces a new element, which is sort of outside their expertise, which is ICM awareness. The purpose of the whole video was really just to explain as simply as we could what the major points to consider were.
Well, no better man, obviously, Dara O'Kearney, well-known ICM expert, whether that's in satellite strategy, which obviously you've written the book, or it's PKOs, which have a sort of converse implication when it comes to ICM. And he's also written the book. So buyer beware. And thank you, Dara, for putting that video together. Also shout out to Adam Owen, who obviously had the idea to do it with you, the right person to pick as well, because you need a bit of authority on something like this to get the message out, and to make people realize how they might be buying a pretty terrible deal, actually, and players potentially could be taking advantage. So we want that to stay all fair and good. We come finally, and I say finally, but this might end up being kind of the longest bit, to, I guess, what you could only describe as maybe the trio of Negreanu stories that have.
Yeah, you mentioned there that I made a video with Adam, David. You've been actually making quite a few videos yourself recently. I think every time I wake up, I see something which you've essentially stolen from somebody else's Twitch or YouTube, but taken all the credit for. It's gone viral with 40, 50,000 views on my timeline. You've become sort of a chronicler of the poker world. Is that what you're setting out to be?
Well, I suppose when some of those early rants took place, I should explain myself, actually, because I guess there are probably people out there who are going, why are you doing this, and why are you just presenting it? Because I don't really present it with comment. I sort of just present it in and of itself, maybe with some edits to put the relevant bits together, but not usually passing comment, because it's sort of for other people's consumption, and I'm interested to amplify whatever happened. Usually I do kind of think it wasn't great, what happened, and I don't mind shining a light on that. But I suppose the point for me is that I don't think that, with all the busyness that people have in the world and all the content there is to consume, people don't really always have the time or energy to go looking for that thing that somebody said apparently on a stream last night. And if that's what the message is, then you end up with a lot of Chinese whispers of people going, oh, what did he say? Oh, no, I heard he said something different. Or, oh, was it really that bad? And I just sort of felt like, well, if you just put together like a 2-minute or 3-minute clip or 30 seconds or whatever it happens to be and post it, then people will at least be able to judge for themselves. They'll have the raw data. They'll have the original file there to look at, and they can make a case or make a judgment on whether they think what happened was really that bad or, maybe quite bad. And I just thought that was a useful thing to just do. I don't really have there's no financial aspect to getting clicks on Twitter or getting more likes or anything like that. It's more to do with just presenting information in the cleanest possible way to people so they can make their own judgments. And you're right, it has kind of taken off as a little subgenre of Twitch videos now at some level, which, that is what it is. But I suppose these ones in particular this week did involve Negreanu, and one of them involved Jamie and Norman Chad, but also kind of ended up being back about Negreanu. I suppose maybe take these things one at a time. The first one is Negreanu has now sort of accepted a challenge from Doug Polk. Obviously, last time on the show, we talked about how that video had gone viral. People were really interested in that funny video that Thomas Keeling and Doug put together. And that's sort of parlayed now into Doug getting a heads-up game against Negreanu. Henry, we spoke about this yesterday, and you were very clear to me about just how big a dog Daniel is in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking on one of the, when he was playing at his peak, one of the best heads-up no-limit players in the world. And I don't think in the short space of time that anyone, even some of the greatest minds in poker from the MTT worlds, with the teams that they can have around them, I just don't think you're going to have enough time to take on Doug in his game, in his own backyard, so to speak. I think what they've put a timeline of like 2 months. They said they're talking end of September, middle of October, the latest. What are you going to do? You're going to call up Fedor, you're going to call in some of the best in the world. You're just not going to have enough time, like a month and a half, to take on someone that just knows the most intricate parts of the game tree in that format. And I think DNX is drawing dead against Doug, especially over 10k hands as well.
Yeah, they have talked about being between 10 and 25k hands. Obviously, the fewer hands, the more variance, but really 10k is enough to sort of sort out the wheat from the chaff, shall we say. Dara, moving away from maybe just the grudge match aspect of it and who might win, and I'm sure it's going to get lots of people excited and betting on it and everything else, and it'll probably end up being an entertaining spectacular of some sort in the poker world when it does happen. But what's going on here? Like, essentially, there is this history between Doug and Daniel back and forth. And it is a back and forth, by the way. Daniel tried to make it like there's no fourth. It is absolutely back and forth. Daniel has said plenty. And Doug has obviously put together, maybe put a bit more creativity and a bit more spice into how he responds, and certainly makes it more entertaining and therefore maybe makes it more palatable for us all to watch and laugh along. But is the fact that they've now ended up in a grudge match sort of missing the point? That, for me, that was the issue, is that a lot of the time it's about what Daniel has done off the table. It's not whether Daniel's a decent poker player. He's clearly one of the great poker resumes of all time. No one would question that. No one would question he did huge amounts for the game historically, and some would say he's still doing lots for the game now. I think he's doing a lot for the game. I don't think it's all positive anymore. But really, these issues are all about criticizing his behavior. So for me, I feel like it's been this sleight of hand by Daniel, maybe quite clever in a way, is that he's now got people not talking about his bad behavior, or at least he was 5 days ago, not talking about his bad behavior, and now talking about this great grudge match that it's ended up in.
Yeah, I think you touched on it there. I do think this is a very clever move from Daniel to deflect from recent criticisms and get people excited about this supposed grudge match. It does feel like we'd flashed back in time to about 12 years when all poker arguments were settled by somebody demanding heads up for rolls. It's also worth, I mean, somebody said this is like Pacquiao versus Mayweather, but that was you, in fact, yeah. But me, it actually feels more like Tyson against Roy Jones Jr. That, like, Doug is 5 years off his peak, and 5 years is a hell of a long time in poker. Daniel has remained very active, but not in the heads-up arena. I wouldn't be as dismissive of Daniel's chances as Henry has been. First of all, I think variance even over a 10k sample gives him some sort of chance. And I do think Daniel will prepare as best he can as well. He's a very, very competitive man. He has gotten coaching. He was one of the first people of his generation to sort of reach out and get coaching on game theory, etc. when it came up. So I don't think first of all, I don't think he's a total dud. Heads up, it's obviously not a specialization for him. But yeah, obviously Doug is a very strong favorite. Doug appears, it's a clear win for Doug because he gets very good publicity for his brand and for Upswing, and he also gets, in his own words, the chance to put in decent volume against a weaker opponent. But I think it's also a win for Daniel because it makes him relevant by being the other part of the grudge match. It shows that he is the guy of that generation who's still sort of competitive with the kids. He has managed expectation very well and pointed out that he is a dog in this. I think he probably wouldn't have accepted this if it hadn't been for he needed somehow to repair damage to his brand. But this is a very clever way to do it, and it's certainly got the poker world talking and thinking. Maybe not as much as people on Twitter think, because I've actually spoken to some recreationals who literally couldn't give a rat's ass which of them wins or loses. One of them summed up his attitude to me this morning as, "Look, they're both assholes, so why should I care who wins?" But it does feel very weird in that, as I said at the start, it's basically a throwback to when people did this sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see once it get going. I mean, maybe there'll be huge hype around it. How long does it even take to play 10,000 hands of heads up? How many tables are they going to play, etc.?
I think it'd take, well, based off the Galfond challenge when they were averaging like 750 hands a day, the second match against Action Freak, we wrapped that up in 22 days, tabling. Wow. So I think like the most interesting thing for me is that there's hype around it now. Say it starts in 2 months' time, there'll be a bit of hype around it for the first couple of matches, and then people will just quickly see how boring Heads Up No Limit is to watch. And like then again, like, you know, towards the end of the session or the 10k hands or whatever it is they put on, then you'll get a lot of people tuning in for the final session like we did with Galfond against Venny. But yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head that there is obviously variance involved, and DNX has still been battling with the best in the world, and he does have a great chance, especially over 10k hands. You know, anything can happen, but I think the hype will eventually die down, and I also want to say on the record that I don't think this match is going to go ahead anyway. Like, I would actually book money that it won't happen, but...
Wow, that's interesting. And why do you think that would be?
I think Daniel's going to come up with a way to try and bring in some sort of other game. He's sold it really well that he's the underdog, so it's like a win-win situation for him. Like if he beats Doug, he's beaten Goliath. You know, if he loses, he was expected to lose. You know, it was Doug's speciality, and I think he will come along with some new terms, and Doug's just going to be like, no, you already said, you know, we're going to play this kind of format, and he's like, well, if you don't agree to my terms, then I'm not going to agree to your terms, and I just don't think it's going to go down with the way things stand at the moment. 200, 400, 10k hands. I just think he'll back out.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be that'd be almost the perfect scenario for Daniel, where he deflects for the period that he needs deflection, and then when everybody's forgotten about all the latest stuff, he quietly forgets about that too. Assuming it did go ahead, if you were a betting man, and I'm pretty sure you are, what odds would you need to bet on Negreanu?
I mean, we could. I don't want to be the boring nerd. We could run it through like a variance calculator or something, but I'd probably say he's over 10k hands. He probably wins that match like close to 35% of the time. But I just want him to be drawing dead against Doug, which is why I said it. But so yeah, I don't know, like 5 to 1, I guess. I'm assuming that's where the poker shares line is going to be, maybe 4 to 1. But it just over it's heads up. You're two tabling heads up. Like there's a lot of variance involved. Look at the Galfond challenge. It's just a prime example of how much variance there is in that format. Yeah,
completely. Yeah, it's I have a selfish reason for asking that question, because a lot of recreational players have asked me what the line should be, and I've come in at around 35-40%. I think it's probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 35-40% is the right line.
Yeah, roughly Trump's chances. So that's
that's a nice parallel.
So I suppose getting back to an idea that I have about this, and Dara, I think you actually tapped in perfectly, which is that, and it's something I was thinking about too, which is that if he does manage to wheedle out of it down the road, he's managed to change the news cycle, and that's sort of the objective, and that may be accomplished. But then within days, he successfully changes the news cycle. People aren't talking about teeth being in anuses anymore, and suddenly they're talking about, oh, heads up for Rolls, it's going to be amazing. Will one of them win $1 million off the other? Blah blah blah. And then Norman Chad, who has consistently been pecking at Daniel's heel about some of his behaviour and some of the lack of courtesy and the lack of grace he's shown on live streams and different things, has, you know, he took to Twitter and he said a couple of things. I want to quote them so I get it right here. He said, "There has been no one in poker I have lavished more praise on than Daniel Negreanu on WSOP broadcast, podcast and sports talk radio. He's done it right for so long." So he sort of sets it up there by saying, you know, I'm actually, you know, a supporter, or historically have been a big supporter. But he said, but this just isn't right. And then he goes on to say, how is it okay to physically threaten someone during your live stream? You now say that it was tongue in cheek. Then rather than apologize, you give a fuck you statement, which is the reference to his first appearance back on it wasn't the Twitch streets anymore. He'd been banned from Twitch, but he went on the platform. He went on
the 4 platforms,
Facebook Live and Instagram Live and all the rest of it, Twitter Live. And he said, he wore a suit and he was all like, ho, 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 and going to be funny. It was really cringe, to be honest. It wasn't funny at all. And it's just like, it was like watching David Brent in The Office kind of stuff. I actually felt uncomfortable with how he's not able to deliver anything funny in that spot, and it just seems really lame. But aside from that part of it, it was a fuck you. It was him going, I'm not fucking apologizing. Why should I apologize? I don't apologize to anybody. And he really is that type of personality, to be honest. Norman went on to say, this is not doing it right. I really wish someone in his inner circle would say, bro, really, what the fuck here? And then also Norm has generally talked about how he doesn't like the bad language. It's not that you're not free to use bad language, but these comments have been really ugly. In response, Daniel thanked Norman for his constructive criticism and said he's going to be more mindful of his language going forward. No, just kidding. Obviously, he didn't do that. He said on stream, very tirade, calling Norman a motherfucker and a dumb fuck and all the rest of it. So, yeah, sort of proving, you know, his point really there. Norm sort of pretty much nailing it, and then even the reaction sort of sums it up too, because it's exactly what Norm has been saying. So that was a really ugly incident, I got to say. That was just like horrible to see. Norm's a bit of a legend in the game. He's obviously been somebody who carries himself with utter professionalism. He mightn't be everyone's cup of tea. The ex-wife jokes mightn't feel like totally on the nose anymore, or it mightn't be what you like. But those guys are like absolute stalwarts of poker. They brought so much to the game 15 years ago when they started creating coverage. We spoke to Lon in a recent interview on the chip race, and just talking about how they really sort of pieced it together, almost created a documentary vibe around the ESPN coverage, and then how they've morphed it and changed it, but stayed with the times and brought in analysts. And it's a complicated thing, and it's about bringing poker to a wide American ESPN, not particularly well-educated poker audience, and sort of enthusing people one time a year at the World Series. So to see somebody with his caliber, I suppose this is the thing that gets me, is like, okay, he can go after Doug and he can say, well, Doug's just doing it for clicks and he wants Upswing to do really well, so he's trying to get attention for himself, and he can kind of pitch it like that. And then with us, he can go, you're fucking nobodies in the chip race. Write your stupid blog, O'Carney. Write your stupid blog, Lap, and I don't give a fuck. You're nobody. I don't have to listen to you. And then he can go, oh, well, fucking put your teeth in your anus to a troll on the internet who nobody knows who it is and probably is anonymous, frankly, and nobody ever will find out who that person was. So that's all kind of easy in a way, or at least he can kind of deflect from actually addressing the core things that people are saying to him. But it's going to be really hard to do that now with people like Norm, and I'm going to talk about Jamie in a moment as well. People who carry real serious credibility in this industry, people who are proper, well-respected industry professionals who have been colleagues of him, who are people he has worked with and worked alongside and had collaborations with at times. And this carries an awful lot more weight.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, like Norm is a bona fide legend, and Norm is actually quite rare in the poker world too. Like, we talk about poker journalism, but there's almost no such thing, because most of the people who are supposedly poker journalists don't actually have any journalism background. They just came in and sort of started writing about poker. And most poker journalism is actually trade press. It's paid for by the sponsors. They know what they can write about. They know what they're supposed to amplify. It's essentially disguised marketing or advertising. Norm actually has a background in journalism before he came into poker, and it's great to see that he still has those instincts to call something out when he sees it's wrong. I mean, Daniel has gotten himself into these sort of scrapes in the past, and he's always managed to get himself out of them, because I think he has a very good PR advisory team around him, and he always finds some way to deflect. But it's getting to the stage now where there's so many of these things coming one after the other, that it's like he's in permanent firefighting mode now. And also, as you said, the nature of the people that he's taking on now is different from like two anonymous Irish bloggers or two guys who have a podcast that only have 600 listeners, as one of his mouthpieces famously said once. To people who genuinely have respect. And I have noticed on Twitter, I haven't really been following this as closely, because to be honest, this sort of thing really doesn't interest me all that much. I focus very much on my own play, the people I coach, the people I know, etc. But one thing I have noticed is that a lot of people in the past who were huge supporters of Daniel are now feeling conflicted. They see he's fighting with other people that they like, and these other people have credibility. They're not just guys they only know from the internet. So I think you're right. This stuff is sticking more to him now, and it also surprises me, because I mean, given how well his life has gone, he's basically rightly regarded as the most successful poker player of all time. He has the best personal brand, the biggest personal brand. He has hundreds of thousands of fans around the world. He doesn't really have to do very much to be beloved by the poker public, but at the moment he doesn't even seem to be able to come up to that narrow bar. He's focusing on very, very small, petty stuff, which really should be beneath him. And it's pretty sad to see. I mean, I don't know, as somebody who went through sort of midlife crisis myself, I don't know whether this is his midlife crisis. I don't know whether it's a feeling of just boredom, given how long he's been involved in the game. But it's certainly something he needs to sort of like rethink. I think part of the problem is because he is so sensitive to criticism, he surrounds himself with people who are afraid to criticize him in any way. So he has this circle of sycophants and yes men, and people who are telling him he's brilliant, and everybody who criticizes him is either a nobody or has an axe to grind. He needs to have some people in his circle, as Norman said, who will actually tell him, "Look, dude, this really isn't the way for poker's primary ambassador to behave." So, I mean, obviously, we've had our own history with Daniel. I don't want to be the guy one of the guys who keeps hating on Daniel. Similar to Norm, I would acknowledge all the great stuff he's done for poker in the past, and even still, he holds the attention of the poker public, and he gets eyes on poker in ways that other players can't. So he has the potential to be an amazing asset to poker. That's, I guess, the tragedy in this, that if he just went about this the right way, he would have a much easier time of it, much better life. But he just seems to be getting bogged down in all these petty little wars now.
That's brilliantly put, Dara. I want to bring Henry in for the next part in particular, because it then very quickly, another quick news cycle change, still on Negreanu, the topic. On a couple of days ago, the episode of The Rake with Marley and Jamie Kerstetter, and I know you've worked with both of them, Henry. Norman Chad came on the show, and the subject did drift to Daniel, as it would do on a lot of podcasts these days. He is a kind of an item on everyone's shows, I'm sure, when they're putting their schedules together. And Jamie dropped a bombshell. Jamie said something that obviously she's known for quite a while, maybe didn't want to say before now, has decided now is the right time to say it, but basically made the point that, you know, and again, I want to kind of get it absolutely correct here, that he had her removed from a commentary gig she was already signed up for. Now, it's very important to make that distinction, because immediately Negreanu strawmanned what she had said, potentially having not gone through it in great detail, so maybe he'll revise that. But he immediately strawmanned it and said, this is me offering my opinion on who's a good commentator, and if someone asks me and I tell them Nick Schulman's better than Jamie, I don't like her, that's my prerogative. I have an opinion. I want to just have my opinion. And obviously, I don't think any right-minded person would disagree with that. If you're asked your opinion, you give it honestly. And if he's in a position of influence in his company or whatever he is, then that's what he's probably going to say, if that's what he really thinks. But there's a big difference between offering an opinion on something that they are in decision mode for and going back to them on a decision that they've already made and said, reverse that, change that, I don't want that. I don't want that person representing us. I don't want that person, commentating on a brand I'm attached to. I don't want to work with her. However, I don't know. I'm speculating how that kind of played out a little bit. But that's a very big distinction that needs to be made here on what Jamie is very clearly saying and how Daniel's first line of defense has gone up against that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine having an ego so fragile that you just shut down one of the brightest fucking minds in the industry, like Jamie Kirster. Is just, I've just got the utmost respect for her. The commentary that I've done with her in the past, I absolutely love working with her. Every time we've worked together, it's kind of like having that annoying older sister in the booth with me that's always like needling me and putting me in my place, and it's just so much fun. And it's so sad to see that even at that level, this is the thing that worries me, is Jamie is like at a place that I can only hope to one day get to, in terms of commentary. And it's really worrying for me because I have always felt like with certain people, you do have to almost like tiptoe around eggshells, because if you say the wrong thing in front of the wrong person, or if they don't like you for whatever reason, or if you're associated, even just by like having mutual friends with this person, that like if they don't like the people that you're associated with, it could jeopardize potential work for you.
He's talking about us there, Dara. I'm pretty sure he's talking about us.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, maybe it's
me.
He wasn't quite fulsome enough in his praise of how we struck him from the main streets of Bratislava. I think this might be his last
Yeah, maybe, man. Maybe it's career over. But just to go back to like Daniel, a lot of people of my generation, the guy was a fucking hero. I remember being, 15, 14, watching Poker After Dark. Tom Dwan, Phil Ivey, all of those guys. The guy was one of the reasons a lot of us got into poker. And it just goes back to like that Batman quote where you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And he just really has. Like, I don't know why he's going after people like this. How can you go after Norman Chad? Like, the guy's a fucking legend. And it just shows that there's no one's safe. Like, if you've got to go after someone like that, if you're going to go after like Jamie, listen, if I ever go after Nick Schulman or Ali Najad, you have the right to fucking cancel me. Like, in fact, I expect it. If I ever disrespect people that have done so much for me personally, like Norman has for Daniel with the old broadcasts, then just put me on blast, cancel me. I don't expect to ever get a gig again because it's just straight up disrespectful. And that's my 2 cents on it.
Very, very well said, Henry. I appreciate that. We're going to leave it there. It's been really good fun catching up with you, Henry. I'm happy to see you back on the island. We actually managed to, in person, go for a pint last night.
Yeah,
hopefully that down again.
I see you're wearing the same shirt from last night, mate. The Vivian Westwood. You haven't even changed it. Guys, he was wearing that until 2 o'clock this morning, and I'm assuming he just jumped straight into bed and woke up with it on. So
I knew you were going to spot that. When you've been so complimentary, you've been like, "Oh, look at you with the Vivian Westwood."
Look at you with the Vivian Westwood.
Cypress patch.
I was like, I'm a young person. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to just wear this shirt now all week.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you, mate.
No, sincerely, it's great to see you back on the rock here, and hopefully we'll catch up for lots of points over the next few weeks. Although you are one of those young people who threatens to do dry Novembers and dry Augusts or whatever this nonsense is as well, and you were complaining about a hangover, and I know for a fact you drank about a third of what
it's terrible when people have positions of power and influence in the industry and they force people to come out to drink. It seems like a real abuse of power, actually. It
is, especially when he knew as well that I'm doing dry August in 6 days. He's like, "Come on, Henry, come out for a drink. We need to catch up." And yeah,
I know David from time to time when I tell him that when he first came back to Ireland in the poker world, he had literally no friends, but he had literally no friends.
Poker friends.
It's good to see he still has no friends, but at least he has people he can pressure into drinking with him.
That's it. Okay, on that note, guys, thank you so Dara O'Carney, brilliant as usual. Thank you so much. Henry Kilbane, star in the making. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.